As an entrepreneur, you probably spend a lot of your time in the weeds, working in your business. But really, how much time do you spend thinking about your exit strategy? Do you have a clear picture of what you want that final outcome to be? Every entrepreneur starts a business with an end in mind, whether it's building a legacy or achieving a massive payday. In this episode, I'm going to show you why having a well-defined exit plan and the team of advisors to support it is crucial for your ultimate success. Welcome back to the Nebraska Entrepreneur, the podcast for Nebraska entrepreneurs who seek candid guidance from Midwest leadership. I'm Steve Canny, and I've been a successful entrepreneur in Nebraska for over 20 years, helping and mentoring entrepreneurs and business leaders from across the country. As the founder or owner of your business, what's your end game? We'll explore why understanding your desired outcome is vital, how to ensure you're on track to achieve it, and what steps to take if you're not. Joining us is Byron McFarland, who has over a 30-year career in advising entrepreneurs on how to successfully exit their business. Byron, thank you for joining me today on the next episode of the Nebraska Entrepreneur. I appreciate your time, and thank you for color coordinating. I wanted to.
Sorry, I missed the pants and shoes.
I know, but we definitely blend in with the background. Today's episode, we talk about exit strategy, and
Okay.
I get asked, if you have any advice to entrepreneurs or people that are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, want to start a business, buy a business, own a business, work for themselves. I get asked a lot about, well, what would be some of the first things you'd advise them on? And I always say, well, they need to understand and define why they want to do it. And there's lots of reasons why people want to start businesses. But the biggest thing when I say that is it goes into knowing the why you want to do it, then what's next after that? Like you build this business, is successful, and then all of a sudden you want to get out. And every entrepreneur, I believe, needs an exit strategy at some point. How are they going to exit out of the business when they're either tired of it or it's their time or they want to hand it off, whatever reason? And I know that this is what you do. You work with entrepreneurs all over the country, Nebraska, but I don't know how many states you've worked with, but a lot. But I'd like to get a lot of your perspective on today's episode regarding your thoughts around exit strategy, and then the why. Why is it important to have an exit strategy? And then maybe we can get into what are some of the things that we can do as entrepreneurs to start preparing for that.
Okay. Well, thanks for the invitation. Happy to share my experiences, the vast ones. Yes.
I know you
try
have
to
a
get
lot.
as colorful as possible.
Yep.
Without naming names.
No name. Names and faces will remain anonymous.
That's right.
Yep. Because I know you have a lot, but
Yeah.
maybe talk a little bit about how you, what you've seen and the reason why you got into the business to begin with, and the need that you saw.
I read an article in the early 2000s that was written by High Net Worth Online, which was basically a magazine for business owners and professionals and executives. And in that article, somehow or another had aggregated data on how many unexecuted documents business owners had regarding their plans, estate plan, buy-sell agreement, incentive plan, the whole gamut of unessential documents. Everybody's got to sign a tax return, everybody's got to sign formation, but all these other supplemental documents kind of get sometimes pushed to the side. And an astounding 72% of business owners said they had unexecuted agreements on their desk. And the number one reason they had not executed them was they did not know if it did what they wanted to do. And so I, at that point, thought, God, that's a tremendous opportunity, because I'm an okay communicator who could deliver a pretty simple message to people, and figured if I can just work on my communication skills and develop some expertise, then I can fill a void that appears to be very vast. And so I did, and that was in the early 2000s when I read that article, and shortly thereafter I read the book $10 Trillion Opportunity, which was talked about the aging of the baby boomers and all the business owner wealth that was going to be transferred from one generation to another. So the force of those two things kind of opened my eyes to the opportunity, and that's when I started focusing on providing that the service of how do you go about getting yourself prepared to sell your company.
What's been your experience you talk about unexecuted documents, but
Yeah.
just wild guess, percentage of entrepreneurs that you meet that haven't really even thought about an exit strategy.
Well, I don't think it's really tough to say whether or not where they are, if they've thought about it or not. I think that's more of it's easier to measure how many of them actually done anything.
Okay.
And so there's plenty of data out there. You got Vistage and McKinsey and Deloitte and Touche's and places like that are always asking to get, to create some interesting document that people would read. And for the longest time, the baby boomers, of course, were the one that everybody's looking at. Like, how many of you have got a plan? And like 1 in 4 had a plan. Bunch had said they thought about it. Everybody's going to say, yeah, I've thought about it, but I haven't done anything about it. And it's really easy to put off. And why is it easy to put off? Because there's no sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. And so it takes some event, something happens to you, or something happens to a partner or a family member. And now all of a sudden it gets like, wow, I really need to think about this. Like a medical condition occurs. It isn't life-threatening, but it's all of a sudden, man, I'm vulnerable, and as you get older, you become less and less confident in your overall well-being. You're not as aggressive as you were when you were in your 30s or 40s. But when you get in your 50s and 60s, they've all thought about it. It's just a question whether or not they've done anything about it. And one of the challenges that I found that helped me really focus on a specific aspect of exit planning was the unwillingness of the other professional advisors to take any risks. So if you were to come to an advisor and say, hey, Byron, I'm looking at selling my company, let's say I'm an attorney or CPA, and I want to sell it to my management team, and I would say, well, do they have any money? And you go, I don't know, probably not. Well, then you haven't paid them enough. I mean, money just doesn't come to them. They're going to have to accumulate it, and then that takes a plan. And so the advisor says, well, I guess you're going to have to sell it either on a note or you're going to have to put it up with the broker. And so those are kind of like the two most common paths of the small business. And then you had your bigger business that was privately owned, that was talking to the M&A attorney or the accounting firm. And typically those guys were reacting to some stimulation. The market is changing. There's a aggregator going on. Well, this is before private equity. Before private equity, it was your competitors were buying it. Well, that's a fearsome experience. Like, I'm going to reveal my business conditions to my competitor. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of risk in that. So private equity has now emerged as probably the most common buyer of small and medium-sized businesses. And they've taken out a lot of that fear of the competitor. However, what they do instead is they basically set you up for an outcome mentally that is very dang exciting. Like, man, I could spend that money. I can see my life that way. And then they tend to have games to whittle away at some of that value.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a good point about, people, and we experienced this. I personally experienced this, and it was because of you, actually, in the conversations you and I had. But, early on, before I started my business, I started a family. And of course, I need life insurance.
Yeah.
I need a will. Don't think about much past that. Then I start the business, and I don't think about the fact that as the value of the business grows, if something happens to me, and I have a partner, and how is my partner going to basically buy my shares, out to be able to give my share of the company to my estate.
Right.
And so to me, it's almost like you outrun your life insurance, right?
And actually, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a really good thing.
It's a great thing that you've outrun your life insurance. And the further you've outrun it, that's usually a pretty good indication that you've got a business that really doesn't need you to finance it with life insurance. Because the business is making money. It has a leadership team that is operating at a high level. If you died suddenly, a bank might be willing to step in, private equity could step in, investors, all those alternative sources of funding. So I would say life insurance represents a more significant need for family businesses that are growing, and that the life insurance is being used to either provide resources to a widow who's not in the bloodline, or it's being used to pay estate taxes so that the property can transfer unmolested down to the next generation. But for owner operators who are unrelated that have a substantial business value, we tend to recommend that you don't fully fund the buy-sell agreement. Let the value outgrow the coverage.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
It's a bit of a unique perspective. You're not going to get much of a support from the financial advisory world in that, but that's what we've seen.
That's good. So you work with a variety of businesses, from family businesses to partnerships. What mine is, or it's not family. There's no intent really to pass it down to family. To probably, I'm guessing, maybe just sole owners.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about partnerships specifically, because that's what I'm most familiar with.
Right.
And you and I have had numerous conversations, and I've appreciated your perspective over the last 16 years that I've known you. When you plan an exit strategy and you have partners that are different ages, maybe there's a 10-year gap, and one of them gets to the point where they say, I'm going to be done.
Right.
And the younger one says, no, I'm not ready to be done. To me, there has to be an exit strategy there, right?
Yeah.
Share some perspective on that and what you've seen. Maybe share some stories about how you've helped business owners either navigate successfully or unsuccessfully, which I'm sure most of your engagements are successful, but I'd like to hear just a little bit more about that, working with partners.
Well, I have found the majority of my work is with multiple owner businesses. And partner would be a relationship that you would have that would be both contractual, like I'm a partner in a partnership, or emotionally, I'm a partner with you in a business where we're both shareholders. And it's not uncommon to use that terminology as a partner, but it's necessary to understand the difference between a partner and a shareholder, because in a partnership, you can have totally different outcomes than you can, say, with a shareholder because of the way the laws are written around that. But without going into that, let's just say that's relationally, what do you want to have in the way of agreements in place that would allow for the orderly disposition of an interest in either a partnership or a group of co-shareholders, and that's key. So if you have two people that are partners or co-shareholders and one of them is older and the other one is younger, then ideally there would have been a lot of thought at the time of the creation of the buy-sell agreement. How are you going to get out if you're the older guy or gal? Because you're theoretically going to be the first one out. And if you're going to sell out to your partner, your co-shareholder, you're going to use a community bank or a large national bank, and they are going to have limitations on the amount of funding that they're going to provide to the buyer. And what we have experienced, that a well-run, closely held business that is doing work with a bank and has a great relationship, at max is going to get 2.5 to 3 times their trailing 12 months cash flow in a loan. So if you were generating $2 million in EBITDA or earnings a year, chances are the max a bank would borrow you would be $5 million to buy your partner out. So the question is that enough?
Right. Yeah.
And if it is, hallelujah, great. Yeah. If it's not, then you're going to need alternative terms, and that's where the buy-sell agreement would be helpful to contemplate those alternative terms. Like, for example, Steve, if you and I were partners and I owed you $5 million, there's basically 3 ways I could pay that to you. I could give you a check for $5 million and you'd walk away, hallelujah. The second option is I would give you a check for $3 million or something less than $5 million, and you would say, I'll accept a note, Byron, for the other balance. But the bank's going to say, well, that's great, Byron, that Steve's going to give you a note, but we're not going to let that note get served until our debt is covered. That's a bit of an issue. Then the third way is for me to say to you, Steve, I'm going to give you $4 million in cash, and then I'm going to pay you $1 million in deferred compensation. And that way you're going to get your $5 million. It's going to cost me $5, but I'm going to give it to you in such a way that I get some tax relief because the deferred comp is deductible to me as the buyer. So we like to use the third option a lot for older and younger partners so that the buyer has some relief. For example, for you to buy something for $1 million, when you to buy stock for $1 million, you would need to earn $1.7 million. So you earn the $1.7 million, you give Uncle Sam 700, you take the $1 million and pay for that stock. But if I say, well, you then take the $1 million and you pay tax at 30%, you got $700,000. So $1.7 million went down to $700,000 by the time it got into your hands. If I gave you the same $700,000, but instead it was going to be in the form of deferred comp, and I said, all right, Steve, I'll give you $1.2 million. You're going to pay $500,000 in tax on that to get to the $700,000. I, as the buyer, saved $500,000 in cash on that. So we like to use the tax deductible. We call it the tax deductible buyout for our partners.
How often do you see? Well, often, but I'm just curious. I don't know a lot of people that do what you do. I don't know if there's many in this market, right? But you mentioned earlier, you got attorneys, you got accountants that probably a lot of business owners rely on for that advice, right? Do you see that as an advisor? You look at all options, and attorneys and accountants, they're very risk adverse. So do you think overall, because I see the importance of using an advisor who does this every day. Is it pretty common that you see a lot of business owners don't get that kind of advice or those kind of options? They're not being taught what options are available to them.
Well, good attorneys and good accountants would be accountants, or the definition of good for the business owner would be an attorney or an accountant who works exclusively in the business space. If I'm a good attorney, then you have to ask, what are you good at? Well, I'm really good at family law, but I can do your buy-sell agreement. Well, you're really good at family law. How many buy-sell agreements might you have put together? Well, maybe for my top 10% of my clients or business owners. And so I just put them together when they ask me to. Chances are you're not really a good business lawyer. And good makes you, definition of good typically is, have you covered my butt? Is my backside exposed because of stuff you forgot to put in this agreement? And that's what really good advice does. It essentially contemplates all the outcomes that could come up and make you go, oh, no. And that agreement or the plan itself should either A, provide a management method for that, like, here's how we're going to deal with your disability, Steve, because you're too old to buy disability insurance. We're going to create specific terms that allow for the buyer to purchase your ownership interest this way, which is going to work because a bank's going to help and the cash flow from the company's going to support. But not good advisors don't know that, and they just put together some document based on terms that they may have seen somewhere. So good is really about experience.
Experience, okay.
Yeah. And so having somebody with subject matter expertise in the mix as an advisor is helpful. We work with really good attorneys. And what makes that beneficial for the owner is not only do they then get the work done quickly with them, they don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it because we have already laid out all the scenarios to them, and then they can just choose which scenario makes the most sense for them. Option 1, option 2, option 3, which would then lay out the various aspects of it. So when we work with good advisors, then we don't have to worry about that good advisor having territorial issues on well, whose idea was that? So anyway, so getting good advice is really helpful, whether if you are in a small town in Nebraska and you're running a successful business and you're working with a local advisor, you have to ask the question, how much time do they spend in this specific space, and how much of your backside might be exposed because they don't have the latest understanding of what's possible.
Yeah. The thing I've learned working with you, and we talk a lot about, our exit strategy for our business, because I firmly believe, I'll say it again, every entrepreneur, every business owner should have an exit strategy.
Yeah.
And because, like you said, there's a variety of things that can happen unforeseen. And but one of the things I've learned too is the importance of contemplating the tax implications.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you'd save them $200,000 in tax. But that's something that I often wonder how many business owners, shareholders in businesses get to that point and they end up paying that extra tax.
Oh,
They
yeah.
really didn't need to because they didn't properly plan.
Yeah. Well, there's substantial tax relief out there, as you know, and if you're a regular corporation, a C corporation, there's tax relief out there for you in your exit. You can essentially sell your company as a C corporation shareholder, and if you qualify for Internal Revenue Code 1202 or this qualified small business, you can defer or not pay any capital gains tax on that sale. And then if you have more than 5 shareholders that are Nebraska residents, then you qualify for LB 775, and you can avoid paying any Nebraska capital gain. So if you're a Nebraska C corporation with 5 or more shareholders, and you've formed your organization within the window of Internal Revenue Code 1202, you would pay no tax on the sale. So not knowing that could result in you voluntarily paying for tax because your advisors didn't know about it either.
Which to me, that's from the very you should know that from the very beginning when you start your business.
Exactly. I facilitated a panel of business owners out in California here. I do this facilitation called Exit Confidential, where business owners who have sold their companies will subject themselves to an interview with me in front of a group of people. And this one young guy told the story of how he sold a business, figured out what he was going to do next, met a person to partner up with, formed a C corporation because this guy knew about this IRC 1202, became shareholders of this company and said, we are going to sell this company after the 5th year of ownership. Built it up to a value where they were generating several $1 million in revenue, and then they sold it 5 years and 1 month from the date that they founded it.
Really?
And paid no capital gains tax.
And they had a plan.
Because they had a plan.
They had a plan.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I know, I'll speak for myself, but I didn't have a plan in 2000 when we started. Not like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about how we're going to just be successful and,
you and nearly everybody else
sell our first deal. Exactly.
Right.
So I think back.
This thing's paying bills, right?
Yeah. How are we going to make payroll next week? But
right.
What if as you work with a new business? I don't know how often you work with newer businesses, startups, maybe the first 5 years. What would be one thing you would tell them right now that would just, if you could tell them one thing, what would it be?
Boy, there's so much to know when you start a business that you don't know. I guess probably the most wisdom would be, if you don't know something that is essential to the running of your business, finance, operations, or sales, then seek help that is at the very highest level in that space. Because if you're really, what I see is most business owners start their companies because they're good at doing something.
Yep.
And they may not be good at selling, or they may not be good at finance, but they're really good at doing the thing,
right.
The operational side. So then if they don't have a good financial management system, then they have working capital problems when they hire people, or they move into buying new assets, and next thing you know, they've overextended themselves in their line of credit because they don't have a really good way of monitoring their resources. So I'd say if you're starting a business and you are not good at finance, then you want to overpay your financial advisor. If you're really good at doing the thing and your wife or somebody in your family can do the books, then pay somebody to help you sell. And then if you can get that thing going, then ask yourself, what is it that I really want to get out of this thing? So it isn't first things first isn't going to be the plan. Very few of us have the luxury of sitting down and really truly thinking about what it is we want to have happen. We just start doing something because something in our life is not right. And we see an opportunity to make it right. So we do it, and we take that action and start something, take a chance. Thank God we can do that in America.
Yes, thank God. That's what I did. That's what I did. Brian and I, we started it. That's what we did. We were good at selling.
Yeah.
That was about it.
And then Mr. Nichols was good with money.
And Mr. Nichols was good with money.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. But yeah, when I think about it, think back, and I mentioned in most of the episodes, I mentioned EO Entrepreneurs Organization. It wasn't until I joined that organization when I realized how much I didn't know, like you said.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know, and I didn't realize until I really started associating with other business owners in this market. Wow, there's so much I don't know, and then that became my de facto advisory group, was EO.
Yeah.
And looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have had an advisory group from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So good advisors is what is what I think is one of the most critical things. If you're like, I agree with you. If you're not good at finance, then get a good advisor and pay them well.
Well, EO provides opportunity to reveal fears, share legitimate concerns, perhaps get some insight from somebody else who has experienced something similar or the same, and then perhaps what they have experienced is similar enough for you, and their response to it was, wow, that I could work for me, saves you a lot of pain.
Right. Yep.
And so it's a great peer group of experience sharing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I usually tell my clients that are talking about forming a board of advisors, don't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Because the advisors are already getting paid to tell you what to do, and they're never really going to tell you what you really need to do for fear of getting fired.
Oh, that makes sense.
So if you really want legitimate guidance from advisors that are, let's say, in an advisory capacity, then agree to pay them and have them tell you exactly what it is that they think, or get a board of directors, and then have that board populated with people that you know are not afraid of your response. Because other than that, everything else is going to be couched with, well, I wonder how Steve is going to feel about this.
I gotcha. So a board of directors with different strengths.
Oh man, if you could populate a board of directors with people that, one, will be honest with you, but two, should be able to provide some value to you, either in the form of, I have been where you are going, and I can show you from my experience the places to look out for. Or I have relationships that are going to get you into places that you said you want to go that will accelerate the growth and the execution of your plan. So either you want somebody who's been where you're going, or someone that can actually help you get there by making introductions to people. That's typically what you get from a really good board. And then if they're honest, then they're going to call BS on stuff when you're essentially coming back with the same excuse for why things didn't get done. Because the board ultimately is holding the CEO accountable. And most business owners are afraid to have boards because they don't want that kind of honesty.
That makes sense.
I mean, it takes a lot of courage to expose yourself and then actually be told that you're full of crap.
Well, you got to be vulnerable. You got to be. We got to be willing to, share your fears, right? Share your concerns, and then be willing to accept what you're going to get back in return.
Yes.
When you share that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Byron, we could talk for hours. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Been my pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. When it comes to your exit strategy, remember you have options. Seek out the knowledge and build a plan. Get your team locked in and identify your potential buyers right now. It's never too soon to do this, but there could be a great chance it will be too late. Check out the show notes for additional resources and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.